welcome to another episode of Still Human podcast. So today it's on a subject which I've spoken to a few people about in terms of meeting new people and how to introduce yourself to people generally. And I think that this can be applied in a lot of different scenarios and for a lot of different reasons in terms of just meeting friends. Also like relationships and looking for like a partner and stuff like that. So I think that this is like a general thing that I have struggled with in the past. I've read a lot of books on communication and psychology, had some mentor time in terms of like energy and the intent that you have behind sort of meeting people and the reasons why you want people in your life. I think that's an important sort of subtopic that I'll quickly go over, because I do think that the energy that you come at this topic with will determine, one, how people see you, but two, also the type of people that will be attracted to you, because, and I use that in every context, in every sort of meaning of the word attracted. Because I think that fundamentally, meeting new people can be difficult, and the reasons why people are probably going to watch this video is because they find introducing themselves, opening themselves up, where to find these people, what to say. Like, if you're already like somebody who doesn't have a lot of friends, you might not be well socialized, you might have not got good social skills, or you might not just feel comfortable actually opening up and things like that. So I think there's a couple of different key elements that goes into this sort of conversation. So I think the first one is, like I said, if you don't have the communication skills. Now I think, like anything, communication it's a two-sided sort of way to look at it, because first and foremost you need to know how to communicate in terms of the nuances of conversation, when to pause, when to ask a confirming question so that then you've got an understanding of what they mean and they know that you've grasped what they've told you. When to, like things like eye contact and body language and posture, and just keeping an awareness of how someone's responding to you. Like, if you go and introduce yourself to somebody and they're very closed and feet in a point away from you and you're stood over there, and they constantly try and move their attention this direction but you're over there, pick up on that. And I think just generally having an awareness of this type of stuff is it's quite a big area, and I'm not going to try and cover all of it in any means. I just think that understanding that things like body language, posture, someone's energy, are they busy, and understanding that sometimes you can try and introduce yourself to somebody when you could have probably seen that they were really in a bit of a rush, they're halfway through doing something, and it's just understanding that social stuff. So it's about realizing that you can actually learn this stuff and read books and listen to podcasts and, probably spend some money and go on courses and stuff, which I don't think you need to, but you can learn a lot just by observing. Like, something that I've found really useful is to listen to podcasts on people who have got like communication styles which allow other people to feel like they can open up, feel like at ease. Like, one thing that I'm very fortunate for is that growing up I did a lot of coaching. So I coached a lot of kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. I was a personal trainer for a bit. I coached like CrossFit classes for a while as well, and all throughout my time coaching I was constantly learning about different ways to communicate and different communication styles, how to get feedback from people non-verbally for if they've actually understood what you're saying. So I've had quite a lot of fortunate experience in terms of communication in a group setting and in a one-on-one setting in terms of like coaching and teaching. My thing that I struggled with when I was younger and growing up until probably about 4 or 5 years ago was just communicating socially. I wasn't particularly great at all of the subtleties and, making conversation when there wasn't something to discuss or something to talk about. But through experience and learning a little bit more and just practice, I figured out that that's in a way how I communicate, and then I can adopt different ways of communication to weave into my style of communication, which everybody has their own unique way of communicating with the world, and ultimately communicating is just a way that you allow your personality to come out, and how you take in information so that you can then, you know, discuss things and have conversations about stuff. So it's realizing that, I think, with communication, meeting people, and, you know, building friendships, building relationships, I feel like there's the science behind it in terms of this is what you do, that's kind of what you want to avoid. And then there's also the art form in terms of the way that you interpret that and then manifest that in your own way. So there's quite a lot of different ways that you can look at it, but I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that you can learn how to communicate better, you can learn different ways to communicate with different people, and then you can practice it and get better at it. It doesn't really need to be much more complicated than that. So I think the very first thing in terms of like meeting new people that I always seem to come back to when I've had these types of conversations with people is, I think it's always good to start at the beginning with what you want in the end result. So say, for example, if you want to meet new friends, and there's a specific thing or an activity which you would really like to form a friendship around, then start talking to people in places where that activity is done. So say, for example, if you want a friend that, I don't know, you want a walking buddy to go hiking in the mountains or the hills with, it'd probably be advisable to start and talk to people that are already doing that, you know, because the chances of meeting somebody and then you having a good friendship and then pulling them into a hobby that they actually want to do is quite unlikely. Whereas if you can meet somebody who's already doing the thing that you want to have a friendship revolving around, then you've already figured out half the battle. You know, if you're looking for a relationship and something that's really important to you is health, then trying to meet somebody who's in a nightclub on a Saturday night versus somebody who's in the gym on a Saturday morning, I know it's a very broad generalization, but as a generalization, you're more likely to find somebody who takes their health seriously if they're in the gym on a Saturday morning rather than drinking alcohol on a Friday or Saturday night, if you know what I'm saying. So that's what I mean in terms of figure out in advance the type of relationship, in whichever context you want to use a relationship, and then just figure out where those people are going to be, spend some time in those places, and then, as I said, you actually have to figure out how to communicate. So I think that, like, there's an important sort of topic that I was I've learned about this recently, and it's become super relevant in so many conversations. It's that when you start to realize that the friends that you have, or the friends that you've had in the past who you may no longer see very much, when you realize that there's a gap between the type of person that you are, or the type of person that you're becoming, or the type of person that you aspire to be, and there's a gap between that and your current friends, then that's normally a good sign that you're growing. It can be a little bit difficult at times. Like, I've got some people in my life who I see more than others, and it's really weird because, like, I've had new people come into my life over the past 12 months, and they're way more aligned with the person that I am now compared to my friends that I made 5, 6, 10 years ago. And that's, like, upon reflection of that, it's because I've been, you know, developing myself. I've been working on myself in a lot of different ways, and it's no surprise that these people have quite literally walked into my life at really random points, and they've become super cool. Like mates of mine. Like, I don't have enough experience with them yet to call them friends, but I feel like at some point I will. So I think realizing that when there's a gap between the people who you've got in your life, or the people that you've been surrounding yourself by, and the person who you are now, that's normally a good thing because it means that you're growing. And that's a bit tough though. And that's the struggle with it, is because you might have not got the skills and the experience to make friends with the people who you want to hang around with, but you've grown a little bit too much to feel comfortable around the people that you have been hanging around with. So there's like this little no man's land in between. And it's really weird existing in that space because it can last for quite a while. I know for me, like, feeling like I've just started getting to the place where I'm making friends with those people who I want to be like. It was probably about four to 7 years of kind of that no man's land, of just kind of working on myself, meeting these people. Like, I used to have a job about 4 years ago, and there was 2 or 3 people in that job who, like, they were really well read. They had aspirations to move out of that job and like create their own sort of business, or to move into a career that was completely different from what we were doing as work. They were active, they would hike, they had like really intellectual conversations. And I looked up to these guys, I thought they were super cool in all of those ways. And then one day they invited me out for a hike, and I was like, oh fuck. Like, it gave me that realization that I wasn't there yet, and I didn't feel comfortable. Obviously, I went on the hike and I hung out with them, but I could just tell that I was trying really hard to keep up with the things that they just did effortlessly. And that's where I sort of realized that the stuff that I'd been doing had been working, because I was no longer this annoying, like, emotional person who jumped in the conversation at every chance because I wanted to feel like I had something to contribute, and I wanted to try and be funny, and I was always making an effort to try and say and do the right thing. And that, if I was still that person, these guys wouldn't have entertained me whatsoever. So I could see consciously that I'd made a big improvement from the person that I was, but that was it was a perfectly timed, like, situation that I found myself in, because it allowed me to realize that I had done enough work to start to get to know these types of people, and that they were interested in spending time with me, but I'd not done quite enough to actually hang out with them in a comfortable way. So, like, I suppose what I'm trying to say here is that, like, whichever point of that journey that you're on, even if you're at the start, it is going to take a while, and it does take a lot of effort. But when you get to the point where you start hanging around with these people and you feel comfortable, and they're asking you for advice, and you're asking them for advice, and you're very much equal, even if you're quite opposite in different dimensions, that's what I think makes a good relationship, isn't it? It's where you've got a nice crossover in the middle. It does take effort, but the payoff's really worth it. It's really, really worth it. So I think the next thing that I want to sort of jump into in terms of like meeting people and all that sort of jazz is, if you don't genuinely believe and you genuinely don't feel like you have got something to offer other people, then there's probably going to be a subconscious block to you actually introducing yourself to people, or not feeling like you're like worthy in some kind of way of when people try and introduce themselves to you. Because that's the thing, and again, that situation that I found myself in helped me realize this, is because these were really clever people. They were really like they could regulate their emotions. They could have opposing opinions on a topic and have a conversation with it without getting emotional and argumentative. They looked after themselves. And if you see yourself as somebody who doesn't have that, and you're trying to meet people who do, then I think that gap is where insecurity comes in. Because deep down, you feel like you're not ready to have these people in your life. So I think it's really important to just like work on yourself personally in the areas which you feel like you could do with improving. Like, I think, like, when I think of the reasons why I enjoy spending time with the people that I enjoy spending time with, a lot of it is because they know themselves. They're genuine. They seem to be honest. They've got life experiences, good and bad, and they've spent time reflecting on them. And then also, like, just like people who are like brutally honest, you know that you can count on their opinion. And a lot of them have got like really interesting quirks that make them super unique. And I think, you don't have to, you don't have to kind of work on being unique, because you are unique. But I think embracing how you see the world, not trying to conform with everything. Like, if you want to wear a really, out there outfit and listen to some interesting kinds of music, then embrace that and realize that's the stuff that makes you interesting, rather than trying to fit in with the crowd and be like everybody else, because then you don't really have anything that makes you stand out as an individual. And I think that when I realised that, and the fun thing about that is that it's actually effortless, because you don't have to then put effort into trying to be something you're not. And when you really embody stuff like that, the other people that are like that are genuinely themselves, that are open-minded, like they're just a fucking nice, cool, interesting people of the world, they recognize that in other people. And then, I don't know, it's like I said earlier, you sort of just attract people into your life when you get over that kind of bullshit. So yeah, have some hobbies or some education in something, or like become super well read in one area, so that you become that person that people get in touch with if they've got a question. And as well, it gives you something to talk about, you know. So when somebody asks you like, oh, what do you do in your free time, and you say, oh well, you know, just kind of watch TV, like, that's, who the fuck wants to be friends with that person, you know? Like, it's such a boring drip answer. Whereas if you say, oh, you know, I go to the gym, I see my friends, I'm starting a business, I make sure that I look after myself, I try and eat different recipes, I fucking go on like an adventure every year, and they've all of a sudden got 7 things that they can ask you about, and then you then have a conversation. So this is what I'm saying, like, if you deep down know that you don't have anything interesting in your life, then you're going to be nervous about speaking to somebody, because when they ask you what you get up to, you don't have anything. You know, you need to have some shit to be able to talk about, as well as having the skills to be able to talk in the first place. So that's what I mean. It's a science and an art at the same time. And then, like I said at the start, like, I feel like the intention behind wanting to meet new people is very, very important, because like, whether you want to be a little bit woo-woo and sort of think that we're all connected, or whether you just want to practically say that you can just tell what someone's energy's like, in terms of like, if someone's coming into a relationship to try and get something out of it, or somebody's coming into a relationship to be a nice, generous person and give, you will feel a difference if you've had enough experience in life to sort of see the very subtle behavior and communication differences between those two people. And I think, again, coming back to the intent and the way that you view yourself subconsciously, if you're trying to get friendships because you're lonely, if you're trying to find a relationship or a partner because it needs to fill a gap inside of you, then I generally think that you're going to start to look for the wrong types of people. And it might not even be something conscious. I just think that if you are somebody that's trying to get a relationship in any context for the wrong sort of reasons, you're going to look for people that aren't particularly healthy. They might not be balanced or regulated. And the thing is, they're in the same situation. So it's like, you've got 2 people that are unbalanced meeting, and then the relationship, in whichever way you look at it, is an unbalanced relationship. So I think just making sure that you're coming into this sort of world with the right intent. Like, I want to have friendships because I want to give, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to share, rather than I want to take, I want to conquer, I want to use people. It's just a very different energy, and it's very subtle, but I do think that just making sure that you're coming from the right kind of place is really good. So for me, like, one thing that I recommended to 2 people, and I really like the idea of it, and I've done this before myself in different sort of situations, is if you are wanting to meet people, if you've realised that you're doing it for the right thing, you've got loads of interesting stuff to talk about yourself, you know, you've got your energy, you're sleeping right, you're healthy, you're wanting to share things rather than take, you know, you've got everything that we've talked about, you've had a little bit of a conversation with yourself about, you know, you might have got like some questions that you want to ask if you're a little bit nervous and you're not too great at making conversation. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a few questions that you can sort of rely on, and make sure we ask open questions and yada yada yada. Is force yourself to speak to 1 person a day with absolutely no expectation on the outcome. So I think this is really important for a couple of reasons, because 1, it gets you used to being the person making conversation, and it will give you that practice of communication. If you fuck up, or you do something wrong, or you're a little bit awkward, or I don't know, end up throwing up all over somebody because you're super nervous. I don't recommend that. But if something really bad goes wrong, then because you have no expectation out of what that interaction would bring, then for me, you can't actually be upset with if it goes like what you would consider not well. I think another thing is it gets you used to breaking the ice with people, and it's just practice on walking up to a random stranger and finding something which is socially appropriate to talk about. Now that's the important thing. Don't just walk up to somebody and say the first thing that pops into your head. Like, I've always really liked having, because I've always gone to the gym. So any excuse to speak to somebody in the gym is perfect, because you can just even ask, like, oh, that's a really cool exercise. I've never seen that before. What made you choose that exercise? And if the type of person, if the person is in any way open to a conversation, then that is an amazing thing to ask. If somebody's in the queue and you can just say, oh, do you know what? This is my first time here. What would you recommend ordering? Again, perfect opportunity. Or if you're in a library, then you can say, oh, have you ever read this author before? Or what kind of books do you like reading? Because this is new to me. And I think, again, going back to the whole intent and matching people's energies, is if you come to somebody and you've got that open question, your energy's good, you ask it in a polite way, you keep your fucking personal distance and all that sort of stuff. We are trying to find somebody who is open to having a relationship, or they're open to having a friendship. As an end result, there's a lot of layers that you've got to go down and filter people out for red flags and psychological issues and very bad sort of personality issues, or they might just be really toxic and negative, and you always need to look out for these things to not allow that sort of negative stuff into your life. On a certain level, nobody's perfect, but you also don't need to invite a roller coaster into your life. Is if that person is on the end of the spectrum in terms of a good person, a healthy person, an outgoing person, somebody that we would like to spend time with, then they're going to respond in a good way. And again, having no expectations, it's important to remember that the only thing that we're trying to do here is practice saying hello to people, practice communications, and start and filter out a couple of people, because I think that's why it's really good doing this type of stuff in like a gym or a cafe or a coffee place that you go to, or like somewhere that you hang out on a regular basis, is because you might introduce yourself. Say you're in a gym, because I just find this is such an easy example, and you introduce yourself to somebody every time you go in the gym. So you go to the gym 5 days a week, you go to the gym for 4 weeks, so you've introduced yourself to 20 people, yeah? Let's say out of those 20, half of them you never see again, because they might have only come for the 1 day, they might be traveling, blah, blah, blah. So now you're down to 10 people who you have introduced yourself to. You might see 5 of those people again, and 3 of them come up to you and say hello to you. So now all of a sudden you've gone from having 0 to having 3 people who you have made that leap of faith. You've introduced yourself, you've asked a question, you might have a conversation for a few minutes or not, and then those 3 people obviously saw something in you which they now want to come and say hello back. They want to ask you the question, they want to see if you took them up on that recommendation, or did you try that exercise, or it was really cool that you come and mentioned that to me the other day, because such and such and such and such, and they come back to you and make a conversation. And that's how it goes. That's the way that you filter people out. And I think that that's why it's really important to practice this in all different situations and settings, is because ultimately the main thing that this does for you is it gives you practice. It gives you opportunities to explore. And if you don't have an expectation on it, then, as I said, if it doesn't go how you wanted it to, doesn't matter. Like, so what? You jumbled your words up, or you couldn't really think of anything else to ask and the conversation died out. It's going to happen. Not everybody that you speak to is even going to want to have a conversation with you. Some people are going to ignore you. And I think just being okay with that rejection, it then makes it a little bit easier to then speak to people when you come across whom that are actually interesting. they have got stuff. It's like I was speaking to a good friend of mine about this in terms of like meeting women, and like going on dates and like just chatting with women and stuff. And I said, if the first time you ever speak to a woman, in terms of like you go out of your way to have a conversation with her, and she is absolutely everything that you would want in a woman, and you haven't spoken to a chick in like months, if you're not somebody who finds communicating very easy and natural, you're going to get tongue tied, you're going to get anxious, you're not going to know what to say, you're going to overthink it, and then if it doesn't go right, then you're going to be really upset, and there's going to be all this like emotional stuff going on. Whereas if you've had a conversation with a woman every day for 6 months, purely just to practice having a conversation, you've not asked for the phone number, you've not asked for their Instagram, you've not asked if you can take them out or if they've got a boyfriend or any of that shit, you've literally just practiced having conversations, then when you come across somebody who you actually really want to, ask for their number after a couple of conversations or whatever, you've had so much practice that you're not going to overthink it. And I think it's the same thing with meeting friends as well. Like, the one time that you actually meet somebody who could have been a really cool friend, if you're not practiced at socializing, then they're going to think, I'm not really interested. So yeah, that's it. I feel like it's good. It's a very, very good thing if you wanted to meet new friends. If you wanted to expose yourself to new environments and just generally have a better friendship group. They say that you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So if you are in that stage of life where you are wanting to improve your friends and improve your circle, it normally means that you are quite a healthy, conscious person who is wanting to just improve themselves in multiple ways. And having a good social group, having a good support network, being able to be there for other people as well, it all contributes into like a community. You can get people together, you can get involved with their stuff, they can get involved with your stuff, and just ultimately it's a very satisfying thing to be able to look back and see that you've got a good group of friends around you and also feel supported by them as well. So yeah, happy hunting with everything, and yeah, remember that there's no expectations. Have no expectations of it, just go and have fun.